West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Let's bring in the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and chief medical advisor to the president, Dr. Anthony Fauci. Dr. Fauci, we've been asking everybody how their Christmas was. I'm guessing with Omicron, you had a Christmas tree. And then to the left of it, you had like 3 giant screens, the top one with infections, the next one with hospitalizations, the next one's with deaths. I mean, you didn't have a whole lot of time to open presents and relax, I would guess, over this Christmas season.
That is true. That is true, Joe. Very, very much so. Yeah, it's a very difficult situation because we have superimposed on a Delta surge that was really quite serious going up before we even had Omicron. Omicron is different, as you just heard from Dr. Jha. It has an extraordinary capability of transmitting very efficiently from person to person, which is the challenging part of it. The part that might be actually a silver lining, possibly, you don't want to get too overly optimistic about it, but it appears, at least from what we're seeing in our colleagues in South Africa, that the severity of the disease is less. Now, that could be due to the fact that there are so many people in South Africa who actually have previous infections with Delta and with Beta, that they have that underlying residual cross-reacting immunity that's not protecting them from getting infected, but it's protecting them from getting seriously ill. We're starting to see a bit of that in the UK, and we're seeing it even now in our own country. So it very well may be that focusing on hospitalizations as the parameter that you really want to follow, and if they stay low and do not go back up, but we're not there yet. We're still getting increases in hospitalizations, so we better be careful we don't jump the gun and think that we're in good shape when we really still need to be extremely careful getting people vaccinated, getting people boosted, making sure we wear masks. We're in a tough situation with Omicron. It's not something to be taken lightly.
Yeah, it is remarkable how easily it spreads. And you talk to, my gosh, any family I talked to, anybody I called to wish Merry Christmas to over the past couple of days, everybody's been hit by it. I'm curious what your thoughts are about the United Kingdom moving the days that people need to be on lockdown from 10 to 7 days. We, of course, CDC has said we can do that with our healthcare workers. Do you see that as something the United States will be moving to generally, moving the date of isolation from 10 to 7 days?
Well, certainly with the healthcare workers, we're going to be doing that. It's under serious consideration for other essential workers, because when you have a workforce that's necessary to keep the country moving smoothly, when you have, as you said, everybody knows somebody now who's been infected. There are so many people that are getting infected, including breakthrough infections. that we're looking at the possibility of diminishing the time when you have isolation, but particularly when you're talking about quarantining people who've been exposed. One of the things we've got to be careful of, Joe, is that when you have so many people who are exposed, not necessarily infected, but in general, they have to stay out of action for 10 days. If they have an essential job, we want to get them back on that job before the 10-day period. And that's what's just being discussed very seriously now by the CDC.
I'm wondering your thoughts. You talked about South Africa. So many people already have been infected. Perhaps that's why Omicron is not having as devastating an impact on individual patients as it may have a year ago. That seems to be the case here in the United States, and I'm just wondering if it's sort of this confluence of events that we've already had people that so many infections already. You've had many people that have had vaccinations. You've had boosters. I'm just wondering, do you think that's why Omicron is having a less serious effect so far, based on the evidence we have so far, than, say, an infection a year ago?
Well, I think it's a confluence of issues, Joe. It's not going to be one unidimensional issue. First of all, there are a lot of people that are vaccinated in this country. Number one, 60+% of the population is completely vaccinated. A number of people have already been infected. So either there's underlying immunity, which I think is absolutely the case. We're seeing a lot of that in South Africa, and or there's an inherent limitation and lowering of the virulence of the virus itself. We don't know what contribution each of that is making. I believe, and most of my colleagues believe, that a lot of it is due to the prior immunologic experience you've had with the virus, either because you've been vaccinated, number one, you've been boosted, and a number of people have actually gotten infection and recovered. The group that we're really concerned about, Joe, are the unvaccinated people, because even if this virus is inherently less severe, just the volume of the numbers of cases that we're going to have could actually put a stress on the hospital system. You know, if you have 50 people who get infected and 5 of them are winding up getting seriously ill, and then you have a lowering of that percentage, but you have 1,000 people getting infected, you're still going to have quantitatively more people going to the hospital. So that's what we're concerned about, particularly among the unvaccinated.
Dr. Fauci, it's Catty here. Can I ask you a bit more about this quarantine period? Because obviously it makes sense for healthcare workers and essential workers, but even for the general population, this long 10-day isolation period is tough on people. It's tough from a loneliness point of view, from a mental health point of view. And I suspect with Omicron, as people hear that it's not very serious, people aren't actually doing it as religiously as they were in the early stages of the virus. Is there something inherently about Omicron, if it is less serious, that might allow you to say, look, quarantine, but do it properly for 5 days, because that is a period in which we think with Omicron you're much more infectious than you are after 5 days? Or is the science not there? Do you really still think that somebody is as infectious on day 8, 9 as they are on day 4, 5?
You make a very good point, Catty, and that's the reason why this is something that's being very actively discussed, literally on a daily basis as of yesterday, in the discussions that we had about that, about taking a look at the entire picture of, as a country, how are we going to address a virus that we hope is being less severe, that is so incredibly efficient in spreading from person to person. So quantitatively, you're going to have so many people infected at some time that you want to not just disrupt society. So that's the reason why we are looking carefully at what you just brought up. How are we going to handle both the isolation as well as the quarantine for people who've been exposed?
Dr. Fauci, good morning. It's Jonathan Lemire. Great to see you, as always. Over the weekend, you signaled some support for a vaccination requirement for domestic travel, saying that it would be another incentive to get people to get vaccinated. Obviously, to this point, U.S. requires it for international travelers, but not within the United States. On that subject, will you recommend to President Biden there should be a requirement for vaccination for domestic travel?
You know, I'm not going to tell you that for the simple reason is that I don't want to be publicly telling what I'm recommending to the president, because if then the president doesn't do it, I don't want to make it look he's going against it. The president takes all recommendations, all discussions, and as a group, we make a decision about what's best to do. There are pros and cons to that. I mean, you've got to ask yourself why it is you're making that requirement. If you're making a requirement for vaccination for people to get on planes who are coming into the country, that's understandable. You don't want to bring more cases into the country. But if you're talking about requiring vaccination to get on a plane domestically, that is just another one of the requirements that I think is reasonable to consider. And I think that's what you're talking about when you heard me make a comment. You know, there's requirements that you might want to get if you want to get into college, or you want to go to a university, or you want to work in certain places. When you make vaccination a requirement, that's another incentive to get more people vaccinated. If you want to do that with domestic flights, I think that's something that seriously should be considered.
It is Monday, the 27th of December of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. It's a Monday after a holiday weekend, did you know? Yes, you did. How was your holiday? I hope that it remained healthy. And I hope that you were able to at least virtually visit with family and friends. I mean, that is still important. And I hope that for those of us, and I extend this to others, that were well-vaxxed and protected, were maybe even able to visit family, maybe that pretty much lives with you, then you can. Okay. Well, we had a relatively quiet holiday. Got a bit of snow in the area. In fact, it has disrupted a lot of travel plans. We'll get into that later on in the salon. Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy this morning. And so we had and continue to have quite a big snowstorm, and the passes are almost impassable. And it looks like we're going to get quite a bit of snow for the remaining of the week. Maybe a little bit lighter today. Maybe people can try to get traveled. Maybe. But I think at elevation, it's still going to be rough. So take care if you're out there. Okay, the morning's been here at the mothership quite hectic. Yes, it's been very hectic. Have to take care of the dogs, and my mom needs to have some extra care recently, and she's not feeling too well and a little bit more concerned about her. You know, she's not young anymore, of course. So it's been, like I said, it's been very hectic this morning trying to keep up with everything. And it may get to the point here, even during the show, that I might have to put up a break so that I can attend to problems as they arise, and they continue to arise. I have a sick dog, too. Ginger, the little Yorkie poo, is still a bit under the weather from her colitis. That's the diagnosis from the vet. So she has a special diet, and, I have to say, we found out the issue of the colitis when we took her in for surgery to have her patella repaired and the back leg taken care of. And we had to, as a reminder, had to put a delay on that surgery because we have to get the colitis together. So the special diet is supposed to help her, but I'm still hoping it does because, well, I don't think this is a HIPAA violation. I don't think so. But, her bowels is still a bit loose. And so we'll have to attend to that with this special diet and hope that it, firms her up. We can only hope. But because she's been a bit under the weather, we haven't really been taking her with us, like to my mother's medical appointments where they can sit in the car. Of course, the weather is such that maybe I don't want the dog sitting in the car even for a little while now. And usually, during the summer, it's too hot to take them. And now these winters are getting back to really being winters. So you don't want to take your dogs with you and just leave them in the car for an indefinite period of time. Now, that might not be healthy for them. But little Ginger, as I intimated, is a bit under the weather. So we're not really taking her out too much because I don't want her to get any more sick than she already is. She's got a cute little coat, though. She's got a coat that we put on her. Yeah, it's cute. I have a tartan one for Gunner, our English bulldog. These bulldogs run a little hot, so sometimes he doesn't take to the jacket that we have for him. It's really cute. It's tartan, red and black, and but it can get pretty icy out there late at night, so I prefer for him to wear it. But it's a little dance that we have. I put it on, and then he says, well, I'm not going out now. Well, it might be a little warm inside. Well, then he finally makes his way out. So that's the news on the dogs. Isn't that something? Oh, well, as I also started to say, we had a quiet but a very lovely holiday with my sister and the kids, my nieces and nephew, and their grandnieces and grandnephew, and then then I've got my niece-in-law and my nephew. Yeah, that's how it is, and their kids, of course. So and we're all vaxxed and boosted, and we do take extreme care in who we consort with. Because you can never be too careful now, can you? And, I should say that I am in line to get boosted myself. I had to delay a bit because I did have the Regeneron anticolonal therapy. And from when my mother and I contracted COVID in the early fall, late summer, early fall. So I had to wait just a bit so that I could get boosted. And I'm in line now to do it. I better get to it because I guess it can be scary. Yeah, well, okay. So in other words, I'm, as long as I get boosted, if I get sick, at least hopefully I won't die or have to go to the hospital. And that's somewhat similar to when we contracted COVID earlier. Had been double vaxxed. And, I got a bit sick. And I sometimes wonder if there's still some lingering effects. It's hard. It's hard to discern because, I'm old too. So I have to figure out, is this fatigue because I'm old? Or is this fatigue because I had COVID? I guess it doesn't matter. All right. Well, every now and then I have these, I got to tell you, they're pretty profound periods of fatigue that I am not used to. Whew. So it's something new, and it could just be that I'm wearing down because I've got all sorts of aches and pains too that have been coming on for quite a while. So I've become somewhat accustomed to the onset of aches and pains. And I just chalk it up to, well, when you get old, you start to break down, don't you? Boy, you sure do. So dealing with that and weird things. I have a weird stitch in my left shoulder, out, on the outside of the shoulder, and if I move a certain way, it just like burns like the dickens. As if I had pulled a muscle, a particular specific muscle. I know that's redundant. But a specific muscle inside the shoulder, well, not all the way inside the socket, but in one of the muscles underneath, the big ones that lap over each other. And it's weird. So I don't know what I did. Sure, I've lifted a few things, but not anything exceedingly heavy. Not, I can still lift quite heavy things, but it wasn't anything that I can remember that was, unmanageable. But I just noticed it here on Christmas Day or Christmas Day night, and I have no idea where that came from. Is it the weather? Could be. Also, it could be from tight muscles in your neck. That will cause a lot of issues in the musculature nearby, and that might be part of it as well. So I did do some work on getting those, I call them mastoid muscles, but there's something else that go up into the head, those big ones there at the top of your shoulders and going up into your neck and then into your head. So I did work on that. I've got a Theracane. If you're familiar with a Theracane or unfamiliar with it, it looks like a shepherd's hook with a few more abutments upon it. Is that the term? Anyway, just look it up. Theracane, just how it sounds. And it is a great tool for doing self-help. It really does work. So I did take that and work on my neck muscles and shoulder muscles, but that little weird burning inside the shoulder or the inside of the outside part of the shoulder, if I move a certain way or lift a certain way, I can feel it. So who knows? I guess I gotta go to a doctor, but who can? Who can go to a doctor? My mom goes to the doctor because she's old. She needs to. Everybody else like us, it's like, do we dare? The reason that my mom and I did get sick is because we had to spend exorbitant amounts of time in the ER for her ailments. And people around here, they don't care. They don't care about anybody else. They don't want to be told what to do. It's the craziest thing. And they say that they're adults. But boy, do they act like children. Which reminds me, we got that Let's Go Brandon idiot out here in Medford. Central Point, which is just outside of Medford. Ex-cop. And there was some question on why he resigned in 2018. Oh, just to give a little bit more of a reminder, this is that Jared from Oregon who was who was on a phone call with Joe and Jill Biden for the NORAD Santa Tracker segment of Christmas, that they sit down and have some fun with the kids. And they began to field phone calls, and this guy got patched in. And Joe spoke with him and, about his kids. And so then as they were signing off, saying goodbye, the Jared from Oregon blurts out, "Let's go, Brandon." Now, Jill winced. Joe took it in stride and said, "I agree." And then, of course, the right wing is all a Twitter or a titter. You choose. Well, either he doesn't know what's going on or he's an idiot. You know how they are. And actually, I'm thinking, and a lot of other people thought too, is that Joe Biden is a good man. It's Christmas. He's not going to carry on this BS any more than what this guy just blurted out. Well, of course, now this guy is all upset because people are on his case. Well, that's exactly what he wanted. This guy outed himself. He did the call. He put it on YouTube, his own YouTube channel, by the way. Spoke about it, and then began entertaining interviews from right-wing media almost immediately. And this guy's going to monetize it, and he may even get on the Rittenhouse tour. He might be an opening act for the Rittenhouse tour. You never know. That's how these grifts work. But, of course, the guy is saying, well, it was just a joke. Oh, yeah, it's always just a joke when they get caught. You know how that works. But yeah, he's saying it's just a joke. And just think about that. His kid is sitting there, and he told the president to fuck off. And now he's upset because people are saying, you're kind of impolite, you idiot. And so he thinks that his First Amendment rights are being violated. Well, we have First Amendment rights too, Jared. So to get back to his stint as a police officer in Medford, a lot of people were wondering what it was that he resigned over in 2018. And so it turns out, I did a little bit of digging and asked some journalist friends in the area if they knew any more than what I could find out. And apparently his dad had taken ill and he quit work as a police officer to help with the family business, which all of a sudden, I forget, is it an electric company or is it a plumbing company? But anyway, he is doing that. But he purports to be a free-thinking Christian who doesn't really, he's not a Trump aficionado or whatever. He's not really into Trump. Well, he's not a never Trumper. Let's be clear. But I cannot tell you how many people out here who ride in these ISIS mega truck caravans for Trump who also say, I'm not really into Trump. Really? In fact, I've actually had people say, I'm really a Bernie guy, but I voted for Trump because I couldn't get Bernie elected. What? What the hell are you talking about? And so, this guy is now like whining, I'm not for Trump. Well, yes, you are. You're a deplorable by definition. If you're dropping F-bombs at the president on a presidential phone call with your kid, by definition, you are a deplorable. But it turns out that the company and his dad have some, shall we say, political leanings that may not be liberal. And another little tidbit is that his dad did have some gun charges in the 90s. Right-wing militia stuff. But, hey, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Oh, my, look at the time. Well, why don't we go ahead and give you the breakdown on the curated part of the show, because we do have that. And, of course, at the top, we did mention about Dr. Fauci, warning that Omicron is not something to be taken lightly. Now, we may not die or have to go to the hospital, but, hey, it's spreading fast. In fact, 1 day, 2 days, and then with the Delta, it was almost 5 days before you started getting sick. So that's how fast this thing can spread. Well, on the rest of the menu, starting off here on the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy on this fine River City Hash Mondays. Fine because, well, it's snowy. Well, the city of Santa Monica, California, will offer affordable housing to black families forced out during freeway construction and other urban renewal projects of the 1950s. The Department of Justice is still probing civil rights-era police killings, and they oughta. And the COVID-19 variant has disrupted holiday travel, but not shopping. Well, hey, at least the important things are still happening, right? Right. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Russia blocked the website of a group that tracks political arrests in the country. And Desmond Tutu, South Africa's moral conscience, has died at age 90. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. page at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by the Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of that chat room link, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, if you could afford, how about the cost of an espresso-type coffee drink? If you could afford to send those funds to us once a month, we're able to pool that money with the funds that we pull out of our own wallets. And then we are able to pay our bills, continue with the continuous upgrading of hardware and software. Oh my God, planned obsolescence rules our world. And because of your help, we're able to do that. And then all of that allows us to continue resisting this hostile takeover of the United States of America by enemies, foreign and domestic. A lot of domestic ones, too. Jeez. But if you could afford to do that, it really is helpful to us, and we would be unable to do it without you. So thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. The Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I incidentally post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on Twitter and other social media platforms. Yeah. And they are very important, though the important part being the show notes and links, so check it out. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Well, I'm still trying to figure out what we're doing with Spreaker. I did notice a tremendous drop-off on downloads. I'm talking like lots, so I got to look into that to see if some of the media platforms that are supposed to get our show are getting the show. So I got to look into that, because that was such a precipitous drop in downloads. It was, I got a notice about it. So, so I got to figure out what's going on. I know that there's a transition period that Spreaker is going to give us. I'm finally getting like prices on the different plans, and their storage will be decreasing for us. I guess we were in an introductory offer that's been going on for a while, but thank you, Spreaker, for allowing that at least. But I got to figure out why there was such a drop-off on downloads last week. It could have been because of the holidays, but I looked at previous holidays, and it wasn't that. Boy, it's like something got turned off somewhere, and I got to figure out where and what it is, if it's anything. Okay, let's get to the matters at hand. And the matters at hand are these curated articles that we've curated for you today. This first offering is out of the Associated Press, and it looks like staff, because it's a holiday staff have put this together here as we start off this fine River City Hash Mondays. The city of Santa Monica will offer affordable housing to black families forced out during freeway construction and other urban renewal projects of the 50s, according to a newspaper report yesterday, Sunday. Some 600 families lost their homes when Interstate 10 was built through the Pico neighborhood, according to the LA Times. Starting in January, those former residents and their descendants will be offered priority access to apartments with below-market rents in the hopes that they'll come back to the coastal city of Los Angeles County. Affordable housing will also be available for families removed when the city bulldozed another black area, the Belmar Triangle, to build the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium. Children and grandchildren of those who were displaced will be eligible. We will be able to right a historic wrong, Santa Monica City Councilwoman Kristen McGowan told the Times. Eventually, we're going to do that for more and more people, and if other communities start to do their share, you can see a real tidal wave potentially across the country. The city program initially will be open to 100 displaced families or their descendants who earn limited incomes, but city leaders hope their efforts will grow into a national model to address past racist policies. Santa Monica's act of civic penance is an attempt to recognize the harm done to largely black communities during the post-World War II era of freeway building and urban renewal. The program is part of a nationwide movement to compensate residents for racist harms related to housing and property. Nationwide, more than 1 million people lost their homes in just the first 2 decades of interstate construction alone. Early on, highway planners targeted many black neighborhoods for destruction, and displaced families often received little compensation. Offering is also by anonymous staff at the Associated Press, but by way of the American Independent. The Justice Department's decision to close its investigation of Emmett Till's slaying all but ended the possibility of new charges in the teen's death 66 years ago, yet agents are still probing as many as 20 other civil rights cold cases, including the police killings of 13 black men in 3 southern states decades ago. The department is reviewing the killings of 6 men shot by police during a racial rebellion in Augusta, Georgia in 1970. According to the agency's latest report to Congress, the city best known for hosting Golf Masters tournament had been engulfed by riots after a black teenager was beaten to death in the county jail. The agency also was investigating the killings of 7 other black men involved in student protests in South Carolina, Mississippi, and Louisiana during the societal upheaval of the late 60s and early 70s. And investigators are looking at cases in which 7 more individuals were killed, including a girl in Pennsylvania. Suspects were already tried and acquitted in some of these killings, making prosecution on the same charges all but impossible. Fading memories, lost evidence, and the death of potential witnesses almost always pose problems in the quest for justice in decades-old cases. Still, in Georgia, a leader of a group formed to tell the story of the Augusta Six, John Bennett, Sammy L. McCullough, Charlie Mack Murphy, James Stokes, Mac Wilson, and William Wright Jr. hope some type of justice will prevail for the victims' families, even if it is not a criminal conviction. With the Justice Department stamp on it, even a statement that the killings were wrongful would help, even if there's no prosecutions. I think that would be very helpful for the community, said John Hayes of the 1970 Augusta Riot Observance Committee. The Justice Department said last Monday it had ended its investigation into the 1955 lynching of Till, the black teenager from Chicago who was tortured, killed, and thrown in a river in Mississippi after witnesses said he whistled at a white woman at a rural store. 2 white men who were acquitted by all-white juries later confessed to the killing in a paid magazine interview, but both are dead, and officials said no new charges are possible. I would have gone after the wife for filing a false police report, but that's just me. The Justice Department Cold Case Initiative began in 2006 and was formalized the following year under a law named for Till, whose slaying came to illustrate the depth and brutality of racial hatred in the Jim Crow South. Brian Gallion and Paul Weissman of the Associated Press bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. The latest COVID-19 variant is upending holiday plans for tens of thousands of travelers, but it didn't do much damage to holiday shopping. Airlines canceled hundreds more flights yesterday, Sunday, citing staffing problems tied to COVID-19 as the nation's travel woes extended beyond Christmas with no clear indication when normal schedules would resume. But shoppers shrugged off the Omicron variant, and holiday sales rose at the fastest pace in 17 years, according to one spending measure. Omicron is likely to slow the economy's unexpectedly strong rebound from last year's coronavirus recession by disrupting travel and discouraging some consumers from venturing out. The variant could also add more heat to already simmering inflation. Oh, they're scaring us with inflation by forcing shutdowns at factories and ports, delaying shipments, and driving up prices. Nah, it's not inflation. The corporations are price gouging, let's be clear. For now, the variant is playing havoc with travel. More than 1,100 flights entering, leaving, or flying within the U.S. were called off, according to the flight tracking website FlightAware. The figure was up nearly 1,000 on Saturday, but 130 flights were already canceled for today. All right, why don't we take our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, The Man Behind the Mask. Spider-Man No Way Home takes one of my least favorite superhero comics tropes, the alternate dimension incursion, and handles it much better than I ever imagined it could or would. But I don't want to talk about that. I want to spend a minute 40 talking about Willem Dafoe, with a 3-second spoiler at the end, which I will warn you about. Now, Dafoe is not just a movie actor, but also a hardcore theater actor. In fact, back in the 70s, he was a founding member of the famous New York experimental theater company, the Wooster Group. Look it up. The man is experienced, he is good, he's a national treasure. So, way back in 2002, when Sony did their first Spider-Man movie, Willem Dafoe played the dual-personality Norman Osborn / Green Goblin. Now, in the comics, the Goblin wears a creepy rubber mask that can move like a real face because, comic book physics. So the Sony production hired special effects studio Amalgamated Dynamics, which created an animatronic mask. And it worked, it moved, it was creepy, but for reasons still shrouded in time, the production heads ditched it and went with the disappointing, unimpressive static faceplate that Dafoe wore in the film. So, when early on in Spider-Man No Way Home, we see Dafoe smash the faceplate in a reassertion of the Osborn personality, I thought, a little nod to the fans who've hated that thing, and, oh cool, maybe now we get a real Green Goblin mask. But we don't. We get something better. What we get is Dafoe transitioning between Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin using just his own weird, expressive, intense face, using just his considerable power as an actor, and Dafoe throws down a Jekyll and Hyde like an artist unleashed. It's awesome. And it turns out it's important for Spider-Man No Way Home to give Osborn Goblin a human face, since the character turns out to be, and here's the spoiler, the heart of a movie that's an allegorical treatment of alternative criminal engagement, or, if you will, defunding the super police. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
One in 6 Americans get sick from eating contaminated food each year. Contamination caused by salmonella is especially common. It's sometimes found in poultry, eggs, ground beef, pork, and even peanut butter. To reduce your risk from this and other foodborne germs, remember to clean, separate, cook, and chill. Clean your hands with soap and water. Separate raw meat, poultry, and seafood from other foods. Wash counters, cutting boards, and utensils before and after using them. Cook all food thoroughly and use a food thermometer to make sure food is cooked. Promptly chill meat, poultry, eggs, and other perishables. Finally, don't prepare food for others if you're sick, and be extra careful when you prepare food for children, pregnant women, the elderly, or people in poor health. To learn more about making food safer to eat, visit www.cdc.gov/vital signs.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Slavery was present in the 13 American colonies since at least the early 1600s. Until slavery was abolished in the mid-19th century, almost 12 million Africans were transported against their will to America. By 1776, enslaved people were about 20% of the population of the United States, with most living in the South. The first Africans who arrived in the colonies at Jamestown, Virginia in 1619 were indentured servants who were obligated to serve until their contracts expired. This arrangement didn't last long, however. Massachusetts legalized slavery in 1641, and no American colony was immune to the practice. From southern plantations to northern farms, slavery flourished. One reason for this was that there was a lot of land in the colonies and few workers. Even with thousands of indentured servants, the colonies needed more people to work as laborers in farms and in other labor-intensive industries. Despite this fact, there was opposition to slavery, particularly among Quakers in Pennsylvania. However, the United States would have to experience a bloody civil war to finally end slavery. Slavery was officially abolished in the United States with the ratification of the 13th Amendment on December 6, 1865. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, distinguished members of the Norwegian Nobel Committee, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you, a representative of every journalist around the world. We begin this Civil Liberties Minute by quoting the beginning of Maria Ressa's acceptance speech for the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize, awarded jointly to her and Dmitry Muratov, the Russia investigative journalist, for their efforts to safeguard freedom of expression, which is a precondition for democracy and lasting peace. Maria Ressa, the first Nobel laureate from the Philippines and a founder of the online news site Rappler, in 2 years has had 10 arrest warrants lodged against her by the Philippine government for being a journalist and faces 100 years in prison. Her speech in Oslo paid homage to journalists who, for the crime of reporting truthfully, recently have been assassinated, dismembered, abducted, imprisoned, and tortured. She said that the Nobel Committee, by giving the prize to journalists, is signaling a historical moment, an existential moment for democracy. It is indeed a precarious moment. And towards the end of her speech, Ressa said, "I don't know if I was going to be here today. Every day I live with the real threat of spending the rest of my life in jail because I'm a journalist. When I go home, I have no idea what the future holds, but it is worth the risk." The last minutes of her speech were, "Let's hold the line together." The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2011. That was the day the National Labor Relations Board ruled that musicians in Lancaster, Pennsylvania were employees, not independent contractors. Veteran musicians with the Lancaster Symphony Orchestra attempted to organize a union in 2007. They challenged the dictatorial methods by which musicians were treated. They wanted a contract to spell out the rules for hiring, firing, auditioning, grievance procedures, and more. When it came time to sign union cards, the symphony opposed the election, claiming the musicians were independent contractors. The musicians filed with the Regional Labor Board. After receiving an unfavorable ruling, they turned to the national offices in Washington, D.C. There, the board utilized the common law agency test to determine the musician's status. These questions are to discern how much control workers have over the way they work, whether they are highly skilled, how they're paid, and if they provide their own tools, or in this case, instruments. When more answers tilt toward yes, workers are considered independent contractors. The NLRB determined that though these workers are paid on a 1099 instead of a W-2 form, they are employees because of their working conditions. They concluded that orchestral management exerted a great deal of control. Management determined musicians' dress, their posture and behavior before, during, and after rehearsals and concerts. Management also imposed discipline and firings. Musicians voted to join the Greater Lancaster Federation of Musicians the next spring, but their victory was soon undercut by management's refusal to negotiate a first contract. The musicians filed an unfair labor practice and won. The symphony took the case to a federal appeals court, which settled in the union's favor in the spring of 2016. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 34 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of, only about 34. And we should have a few snow showers scattered about the area this morning. Otherwise, a good deal of clouds, but very cold. Temps nearly steady in the low to mid-30s, and winds will be light and variable. And then snow likely tonight with lows in the upper 20s. Winds light and variable, and we should be getting about 1 to 3 inches piled up. And then snow showers tomorrow, very cold. Temps nearly again and steady in the low to mid-30s, winds light and variable, and it looks like snow should be accumulating around an inch. And of course, we are in a winter advisory period as we speak. It looks like, yes, we do have confirmed cases of coronavirus that have gone up since we last spoke. We now stand at 260,046 confirmed cases, and the deceased has increased and now stands at 383. Pollen is rated as none right outside the window in Rogue River proper. The air quality index is good at 36 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is low at 1. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.83 inches. Visibility is at 5 miles, and relative humidity is at 90%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 52 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 54 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 56 and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 20 degrees and cloudy. Kabul is 31 and clear. Hong Kong is 50 degrees and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 35 and fair. Sydney, Australia is 62 and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 46 with a light rain. And New York is a chilly 34 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Dasha Litvinova of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Russian organization that tracks political arrests and provides legal aid to detainees said that government regulators blocked its website on Saturday, the latest move in a months-long crackdown on independent media and human rights organizations. Ovid Info reported that Russia's Internet and Communications watchdog, Roskomnadzor, blocked the group's website. The organization said in a tweet that it wasn't formally notified about the decision and does not know the reason for the action beyond that it was ordered by a court outside of Moscow. The website was unavailable to Russian internet users on Saturday and was listed on the government's registry of banned web pages. In light of the move, the group urged supporters to follow its pages on a number of social media platforms. In comments to the Interfax news agency, Roskomnadzor said the website was blocked because, according to the court ruling, it was involved in propaganda of terrorism and extremism by containing materials that justify actions of extremist and terrorist groups. You know, anybody who might run against Vladimir Putin.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Andrew Meldrum of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Desmond Tutu, South Africa's Nobel Peace Prize winning icon, an uncompromising foe of apartheid, and a modern-day activist for racial justice and LGBT rights, died yesterday, Sunday, at age 90. South Africans, world leaders, and people around the globe mourn the death of the man viewed as the country's moral conscience. Tutu worked passionately, tirelessly, and non-violently to tear down apartheid, South Africa's brutal decades-long regime of oppression against its black majority that only ended in 1994. The buoyant, blunt-spoken clergyman used his pulpit as the first black bishop of Johannesburg and later as the Anglican Archbishop of Cape Town, as well as frequent public demonstrations to galvanize public opinion against racial inequality both at home and globally. Nicknamed the Arch, the diminutive Tutu became a towering figure in his nation's history, comparable to fellow Nobel laureate Nelson Mandela, a prisoner during white rule who became South Africa's first black president. Tutu and Mandela shared a commitment to building a better and more equal South Africa. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.